Hi there, welcome to Gnostic Vlog 19, Confessio 19. I was planning to do my very last video about 2 weeks ago, and I seem to have uploaded a lot of more material, and some of which is getting a little bit controversial, a little bit darker. And I have one video planned and one video finished, which are very dark. Well, yeah, I go heading towards darkness and controversiality. And I don't want to get controversial. So it's time to put a sentinel on my tongue, really, because, if you've got nothing uplifting to say, you should not say anything at all. And silence is golden. Silence is the most uplifting thing that you can actually do at a certain stage of communication or telling the message, as it were, as you see it. And, obviously, you impart Gnosticism as you individually see it, admittedly after some time of study and even practice, although by no means enough practice or enough study for that matter. And you never sort of end. You never end studying Gnosticism because it's such a broad subject. But nevertheless, it should be kept uplifting and full of light, rather than just, it should be lightful, delightful. Even, but nothing sort of going into dualism too much, or the sort of acceptance of dualism in the lower worlds anyway. So without further ado, I also just uploaded now a video on the, let me get it now, the Ordre Martinistes Souverains. Commonly known as the OMS, and it's got to be known as the OMS because I don't want to butcher the French language any more than I have to, which I probably already have grossly. And apologies for my terrible French pronunciation. So OMS it is. And I made discrete reference to them. I'm talking about complexity and spiritual path. And I didn't mean it as a criticism of that august order, because let me tell you that on the face of it, the OMS seemed like the last word in Martinism. I mean, their scholarship is phenomenal. Their materials are fantastic. Many of them original materials, handwritten from the people that count. And their objective, which is to combine three strands of Martinism and Martinistic occult white magic, is laudable insofar as it goes. And, it would be certainly very, very disingenuous, really, not to say that the Martinist movement owes the OMS a massive thank you for their incredible work in bringing together all the strands of Martinism and all the papers and all the manuscripts, and creating a fantastic initiatory service, initiatory system to the general public and people of normal to high intelligence can certainly follow, and dedication is required to follow their curriculum, let me tell you that. Certainly more dedication than I have. But that's just me. And, obviously with something like scientific illuminism, so-called, if you give people certain tools and certain rituals, and they from around the world they come up with the same results, does this not point to a certain reality? But but there's always a but, isn't there? I think that fantastic as the OMS is in terms of scholarship and initiatory service and providing spiritual service to others. Um, it seems to me that a bit like the Golden Rosy Cross, with their sort of fixation on their founder and everything that he wrote down, which he wrote down in the 1920s. And for example, and dare I say it, the Order Templi Orientis with its fixation on Aleister Crowley and everything that he wrote is sort of gospel and fantastic. Somebody said, that all these occultists and way showers and people, spiritual seekers, everything that they've written down in their, I suppose what you might call it, in their Book of Shadows. Admittedly, Crowley's Book of Shadows is enormous, and Dion Fortune's Book of Shadows is huge, and MacGregor Mather's book is Book of Shadows is fantastic. But they're all books of they all reference to themselves, really. Well, of course, a lot of the material that they write down is not only relevant, but super helpful to other people, which is why the Books of Shadows are made public. If they really were a Book of Shadows, they'd be secret. They'd be private things that you write down in your own diary, and they wouldn't be for public consumption at all. And every one of these videos would be a private video, for example, and you wouldn't gain access to the information. So, although that, everything in this video and in all my videos is all just my opinion and my experience, I mean, something might rub off on you. And so I suppose it's the same, if you joined the OMS and you followed the initiatory path, things would rub off on you. There will be definite transformation, alchemical transformation, if you can be bothered to do the work, which is the rub. Of course, you have to be committed and dedicated to doing the work that the order sets out. And I think if you do that, then you can go clear. But the other thing about it is that, like the three strands, bringing demons into the light. Oh, I don't know. I know that the demons represent parts of your own negative self, which you need to integrate into your whole self and forgive yourself. And you can't forgive yourself in one big lump. So you invoke demons in order to understand your negativity and to dismiss negativity and forgive negativity where it arises, and how the demon, the particular demon, represents the sort of negative facet of your personality, the unresolved issues that you have. And you've got to forgive these facets and issues one by one, and forgive yourself bit by bit, as it were. So I understand that's what theurgy is about, and bringing the demons into the light. That's a sort of psychodynamic model for it. And I suppose if you started talking about, well, some demons don't want to be brought into the light, and they're very treacherous creatures, and they're apt to stab you in the back, then you go into the sort of quasi-literalism that I criticised in my last video, talking about Jesus being a literal figure. So, you've got to be careful with this. You kind of, one oscillates between quasi-literalism on one hand, and a psychological, psychodynamic model on the other. And I suppose you've got to be ever so careful that you don't mix the two up, or you don't understand how you are looking at this. Am I looking at this from a psychological angle? Am I looking at it from a literal angle? Do demons and angels really exist as non-localized beings, or are they just symbols, or are they just I don't know, psychological tricks, if you like, sort of Scientology kind of Scientology tools, Scientological tools. to enable you to become more self-aware and to know yourself better. There's all that side of it, which I've no doubt the OMS, is very keen and would argue strenuously that their objective is to make a person more integrated and make a person more than they are, and make a person understand themselves so that they might better themselves, so they might make a better job of living in this world, so that they won't be so stressed and go into fear so much, upon which the demiurge feeds, you see. So if you know yourself and if you can make a better job of living in this world, then obviously you're less cannon fodder. The quality of your meat goes down, and the demiurge can't feed on you so much, because you're not freaking out and wigging out and going into fear and greed and anger and all the rest of it. You see, so that's one of the reasons why know thyself and become better than you are important objectives, really. And you could just be sort of, on one hand going into your meditation and your yoga, but still there's loads of unresolved issues in your mind. And when you come out of your meditation, you'll sort of know better, or even worse than you were before you went in, because you haven't really come to terms. You haven't you haven't come to terms with yourself and all the aspects of yourself, you see. So I understand that, but against that, people say, well, you can fire up these negative aspects of yourself, and they will control you, and you don't control them. So it's a dangerous, tricky business, you see, using negative aspects of yourself and bringing them into the light. And a lot of people say, well, the only person that can do that is Christ. According to the system, he's the only one who can bring any demons into the light. But if you read the Gospels, he's actually ejecting demons out of people, and he's not bringing the demons into light, he's bringing their victims into light. Because it could be that demons don't give a damn about their victims, that you really are just cannon fodder. Your meals on wheels, meals on legs, as far as they're concerned. So there's a bit of controversy about certain aspects of Martinism, to be sure, and I rather thought that de Saint-Martin was more into simplicity and meditation, and not so much into occult research and having congress with entities that might not have your best interests at heart, you see, and that the way of the heart is to transcend or magic, even white magic, as I've explained in my video on Gnosticism and the magic hamster. You don't. I don't think you get any further. So it could be that the OMS is not as transcendent at heart as I would like it to be, for myself anyway. And that's something to bear in mind, I think. I would have to bear in mind before I applied for a membership at all, or followed their curriculum of study, good as it is, and it is first class, crackingly good, let us say that. But it might not be suited to everyone, basically. And a more simple approach, a more devotional approach, I might say, and more Christological approach might be better for a lot of people, especially people that are not very sophisticated, like myself. I'm more of a practical person than an intellectual, really. And I sort of don't like being told I don't know something. I've never liked that. I have a problem with that, really, which is just, my thing. But it's also the thing of a lot of people as well. Horses for courses, courses for horses, rather. If you think that the OMS can offer you the last word in Martinism, then go for it. And certainly they deserve your attention because of the massive amount of work that they have selflessly done in the cause of creating a Martinist system of thought. And so that brings me on to the final thought, which is I think Martinism is about going with the flow of energy of the times, and it's sort of, I almost feel like sort of setting up a free Gnostic Martinist society, where you make the tools for people to use, but you don't actually sort of lay it out very conveniently for them. You don't provide the answer. You just provide all the questions, really, that they have to answer for themselves in their own way. And I don't think a lot of orders and groups and covens, for that matter, Wiccan covens, they're trying to be too helpful. Do you know what I mean? And as a result of becoming too helpful, and too dedicated to their students, they actually sort of repress their students a bit, and they don't give them enough freedom, as a student needs, especially a freedom to fall on their face and get egg on their face and even get a few bruises. Do you know what I mean? Psychic bruises on the way. But I'm not sure that psychic bruising is an objective either. I don't think you should go around looking, for psychic baseball bats, and you shouldn't go around looking for a psychic fight with entities that will surely do you more harm than you can do them, because you're on their territory, and in their terrain, and they can actually knock you about a bit more than you realise. So, I just add that as well as a note of caution in my own experience, because what you think can often be reflected in powers beyond your control, and you can manifest things that you didn't want to be manifest, simply because you've thought of them and then you've focused your thoughts on an amplifying system, which makes your negativity even worse than it was before. And I've seen that in people as well. I've seen that happen lots of times, especially in covens, especially in Wiccan groups, and there's lots of things that can go wrong out there. You'll be surprised. And people get sort of involved in things that they would never get involved in normally, because they become trapped in certain paradigms, and in certain ways of thinking to which their ego becomes attached. And I found this in myself as well. And then you get very uppity when someone comes along and it sort of challenges your ego, challenges what you know. You get very, very angry about it and upset. And you have to sort of breathe through that, Breathing is very important. The cycle of breath is incredibly important to develop. If you get angry, you need to breathe. If you get scared, you need to breathe. If you get anxious, you need to breathe. If you think you're going to go to a panic attack, you need to breathe. You need to be able to breathe. Breathe in the air and don't be afraid to care, as Pink Floyd put it, the result of all this is I also don't want to start making, as I say, controversial videos. And this video has turned into controversial material as well, for that matter, you see. So you see how easy it is on the spiritual path to get drawn in to the drama of the lower worlds, and to make spirituality something reflective of all the disastrous energies that are around, whereas basically I should shut up and do my meditation, and do it for myself, and not go on YouTube spouting on about things that I know nothing about, ostensibly, or at least some people think that anyway. And I should give you all time to catch up with the material I have got, to digest it, and to criticize it, and to query it, and to question it, definitely. You should do that with all materials that you receive about spiritual enlightenment. Everything it can and should be questioned. There is nothing authoritative. The only thing that perhaps should be sort of practiced is the method itself. If there is a method, you should stick to it, and give it a good chance of going into you, as it were. So if there's a method which works for you, then stick to it. But for everything else, you should question. Nothing is authoritative, except perhaps the method that works for you, because it's authoritative to you because it works for you, right? That's all I'm saying. So sort of apologies really to the OMS are due, I think, really. And one shouldn't be disingenuous towards other people and other people and the service that they're providing. I mean, they mean very, very well, but of course, I know what you're going to say. The path to perdition is paved with good intentions, and that sometimes is true. You have good intentions, and sometimes, well, in the lower worlds and the world of the demiurge, good intentions don't mean a damn thing, because the results are disastrous, as always was sort of going to be predicted or created by the demiurge. He's always going to take your best intentions and be very happy to see them all come to disaster. Do you know what I mean? That's one of the things about the demiurge. That's what he likes to do. He gets off on that. He feeds off that. I don't know. Maybe he masturbates to all the pain and suffering that he brings. I don't know what his gig is really. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if there are human beings that masturbate to suffering, then perhaps there are non-localized entities that masturbate to all the suffering in the world and get off on it. Pretty sick, really, and pretty twisted, and pretty dualistic. And you should really decide not to have anything to do with those sort of people and those sort of entities, really, because they're not people that you'd want to invite to tea. So I don't want to make any more videos if they're going to go dark. Do you know what I mean? Or deep or anything like that. I want to keep them. I want to keep it light filled, delightful, possibly with music. I think pictures paint 1,000 words, but then I think music paints 1,000 pictures, which then paints 10,000 words. So even music, vibration, is better than using the English language to spout on about all this, and where you should actually just be concentrating on the method, and writing down your own results, and keeping them private, and going out and being kind and compassionate and nice to people, as well as developing your own introspection. And I think if you do that, you won't go as wrong as you could go wrong if you start getting a little bit above yourself. Do you know what I mean?